Hi, Jeppe. Lovely that we're doing this. Today, I wanted to talk about Pleo Embedded. And let me just start by saying that Pleo has been around for 10 years, and our mission has been to help European businesses thrive. We have 40,000 SMBs day in, day out running and scaling their businesses on Pleo. So, to start with, walk me through the journey. How's it been the last 10 years, and what do you think how European SMBs are doing?
Thanks, Kunal, and thanks for having this chat. You're right, it's 10 years now, and I think the world and the business world is quite different than it was 10 years ago. What Nico and I, my co-founder and I, were seeing 10 years ago was, it was not a new need as such. Businesses have been spending for obvious reasons for a long time, but they were starting to spend in a different way. So spending in businesses, delegated spending in businesses was pretty much travel, throughout the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. But 10 years ago, we saw businesses started to spend in a different way where suddenly, we had delegated marketing spend. We had delegated software spend. People were signing up online for different tools and so on. Hardware was delegated. We saw people ordering their own laptops, and they also started booking their own travel and so on. So we were seeing an opportunity to create a product that could cater for what we call delegated spending in businesses, but in a way that was still safe, transparent, with some degree of control, and without causing a lot of mess. The last bit was actually important because I think as business spenders, as business people, we've always hated this spend management process. We've all tried it, being out and about, and suddenly the receipt is in your pocket, then it's, in your bag and so on, and you forget about it, and it's just such a tedious process. So that bit was also important for us.
And the one thing which has been really insightful for me has been it's more than cards. Because if we look at the market, everybody associates spend with cards. But what you just said, there's so much more. It's about enabling the business to grow. It's about how do you spend on your software? How do you spend on your hardware? How do you spend on your business? So, what has been some of the learnings for us as a company over the last 10 years? That how is that evolving? And what do businesses actually, what's the insight for us?
Yeah, and I think, some of these themes are changing over time. I think early on for us, it was about enabling all of the spending in business. As you allude to, cards is an important one, but sometimes it's paying a bill, or sometimes it is an employee that has done certain things out of pocket, and you need to have a good process for reimbursing. So that foundation of covering all spending was important. But once you sort of check the box on that, it's also like, how do you drive healthy spending in business? And of course, that's important. How do you ensure that employees are buying the right things at a reasonable price? How do you ensure that things are being overseen in the right way, but not necessarily over control, not necessarily too cumbersome, but a good governance around what is being purchased.
Yeah.
And I think healthy spending has become more and more important as we have, let's say, approached a more normalized economy, or maybe a slightly adverse economy. Then healthy spending is an important topic amongst CFOs out there. The last bit I would call out is, of course, how do you make this whole process smooth, automatic, less people or like less human work intense? And I think here comes, the integrations you have, the machine learning we applied in the early days, the AI we apply today, just so that a lot of the processes are happening without any human work involved.
And I think the one thing I've started to feel is we are actually building an operating system to help those businesses thrive. Because if I look at the European market, anything above 500 to 1,000 employees, you have plethora of systems. You have specialist systems for there. But when you think about an SMB, which is 10 to 500 employees, they need something that works when they need it. And to your point on integrations, when we are bringing HR systems, accounting systems, your email systems, so we are actually becoming the heart and soul of the business. And we know what they need when they need it. And it's about managing the entire financial suite more than spend. And for us as a company, as a business, how does that differentiate ourselves in the market?
I think it's as consumers, but also as finance people, we want our sort of working environment and the things we're doing to be super intertwined and connected, right?
Yeah.
The world where you were doing certain things in one system and then you were printing or exporting and then you were, shifting to another system and importing and so on, that is a world of the past. I think now things just needs to be deeply connected. And as such, we don't mind whether the conversation starts with Pleo and a system around spend management and cash management, which is our current offering, or in essence, whether the conversation starts with, your accounting system or your accounting process. We just need to be where the customer is, and we need to be deeply connected into that, so you don't really feel the shift between one environment and the other.
I think what you just said nicely pivots us into Pleo Embedded, because I go back to our mission, which is to help European businesses thrive. And as we have been successful, increasingly what we have seen, customers want their problems to be solved. They are looking for the Apple experience. What that means is my MacBook and my iPhone work seamlessly together. And in terms of an analogy, if a customer is using an accounting platform or an HR system or their bank or their acquiring platform or the lenders, it should all just fit in together nicely. And that's where we want to bring embedded, because in order to achieve our mission to make European businesses thrive, we want to enable the capability around spend management, cash management, the financial OS to be where our customers are. And just building on that, what's been the reaction with, let's say, financial institutions? Because we're not competing with them, we're complementing them. So how do you see them reacting? What's been the reaction in the market from them?
Yeah. And before getting to that, let's take a couple of steps back, because I think for the first 10 years, we've just been razor focused on having that direct relationship with the customers on all touch points. And I think that's been a quite good starting point. That's how you really get these intimate learnings, and you adapt your product and you ensure there's satisfaction altogether. And now we've succeeded with 40,000 customers. We have incredible high satisfaction and retention, and overall, it's a quite successful relationship. And then it comes back to our mission. How can we get this in the hands of even more customers? 40,000 is a lot, but in the perspective of the wider Europe, it's still quite a small share. And that's how this conversation started. How can we make something that is super fluid, directly embedded into other players that are already successful with SMEs and mid-market at scale. And I think we've seen over the years, well, initially a little bit of like what's going on here is this competitive, but over the years, much more of okay, how can we play to each other's strengths? And we've seen a great level of pull in the market of such players you're mentioning, HR systems, accounting software, banks, and so on, that are like, hey, we actually see some value in partnering here. We would love to bring your product with incredibly high satisfaction, with a great level of data, with a one-to-many approach. So that's the point with Pleo, is we not only serve the finance team, but of course we extend into the wider organization. How can we take all of that directly into the core of our product, no matter if that's accounting software or bank, and actually make that customer journey even more smooth and strengthen the overall business relationship, which is what you tend to see when you're connected. We see that as well with our customers that are connected. It just becomes an even stronger and more committed relationship.
And I'm going to get into a bit of myth busting. So when people think embedded, everybody thinks APIs, developer docs, integration, right? But our approach is different, because we deeply care about the customer experience. And our differentiators are rich experience. We are so proud of having an NPS of 50. I used to work at a bank. NPS of 0, you got promoted, right? So we have an NPS of 50, and it's about quick time to market. To your point, we want to build those joint experiences, those winning propositions together. And therefore, quick time to market and rich experiences are differentiator. To your second point on, we want to create those experiences, we have been successful on a product-led growth motion over the last 10 years. And that's what we want to bring to the table. We are not trying to position that you build something, we build together. We scale something together, and we know how product development works. If I'm the CPO of an accounting software provider, how do you think I'll feel? How should I react to what I'm saying or to what Pleo Embedded is telling me?
If you're a chief product officer of any company at scale, servicing the masses of SMEs and mid-market, you got to care about your brands. You got to care about your customer experience. And you got to be very careful that whatever you're doing with any partner is accretive to that.
Yes.
And I think that's to some extent also why we have waited a little bit with these types of conversations, because they're not trivial. And we want to bring to the table real evidence that, hey, here is a company that has brought on board customers at scale. We can handle the volumes. We can give a really, really satisfactory experience. We can handle the risk associated with being a financial product, being licensed in the UK, being licensed in Denmark, and having a real track record of overseeing fraud, money laundering, all of these incredibly important tasks as well. So I think, there's a level of maturity you need to bring to the table with a partner that has operated at scale for a long time, who cares about their experience as well. So, as a counterparty, I would think a lot about that and really go deep on, okay, how do we work together from here?
And I think your point on fraud, compliance, money laundering, being double regulated, being operational in 16 countries with 1.5 million users, it's a really important point because we are bringing an amazing experience which solves the need in a regulatory compliant manner. And we are not experimenting with our partners' customers. We deeply care and we want to have the joint mission on making them and us successful, and ultimately the SMB successful, to be the business operating system. And that's what we want to create if you think about it, right? We want to create business operating systems for SMBs with our partners, be it working with a bank where their strengths are advisory, lending, knowing the customer in and out. How do you make economies work and scale? And we bring our capability that you can scale at pace without capex investments and you can drive things. If I look at an accounting provider, which is the other end of the spectrum, how do you bring hindsight to foresight? We talked about the paper receipts and the lunchbox and the pockets, but now you look at month-end reports, you export CSVs, but now you're giving your businesses the insight and you're elevating from a system of records. I want to touch on the data point which you mentioned earlier. You get into intelligence, you get into advisory. What are we doing on intelligence advisory, on being beyond the system of record? Like, what does it mean to actually make European businesses thrive for us?
I think the beauty of being incredibly focused on spending in this case is you get a lot more granularity on your data as well. So as said, we're not just a product for the finance team, we're a product for the wider organization. We know who spends money, who buys what, at what time.
Yeah.
We know a lot of details about what's being purchased on a line item basis. Today, with the tooling we have out there, the AI and so on, it's fairly easy to get full context of what are the behaviors and the actual things that are being purchased. Bringing that back to us is valuable. It's valuable when we project things. It's valuable when we assign credit ratings to our customers, decide on overdraft and so on. But it's certainly also valuable to other parties, depending a little bit on the partner profile.
Yeah.
If you're a bank, certainly that data is valuable as well.
Yeah.
So I think, allowing that data to come to life with our partners has real value.
Yeah, I want to touch on some of the use cases which, as I've onboarded, I've seen on the platform, which is incredible. If I am an SMB, I suddenly get an insight saying, hey, Kunal, you're spending 15% more than your peers on this. If I'm a finance person and if I see a random vendor, I actually see a description there. And if I go back to your example on banks, where I start seeing adding value, is my relationship managers know what the business is doing. So, there's a saying, treat me like you know me. So a bank's relationship manager, before they go to the SMB, they say, hey, we saw that you're trying to, you spend 50,000 euros on Meta ads. Let's talk about growth of your business and how can we support?
Yes.
If you're a lender, you engage with an SMB twice a year. Now you just send them, a note or a notification or whatever. hey, let's help you scale. Here's a pre-approved offer. And that's where it brings the truly deep relationship driven by insights on one, how the SMB is behaving, how their peers are behaving, what are they doing when they're doing.
Yes.
That becomes really insightful.
Yes. Yeah, it's all about driving healthy spending in businesses. And I think for us, that implies a lot of different things.
Yep.
It implies foundational stuff like how are we enabling each spender to spend and with how much? How are we creating safeguards around what's being purchased? Step two, how do we ensure that there is governance so the right people are overseeing what's being done?
Yeah.
How are we spotting fraudulent activity and dealing with that? Or potentially flagging slightly more gray zone behavior for, hey, you need extra attention on this transaction. It might be okay that a certain restaurant event has happened on a Saturday, but it is a bit more extraordinary than usual behavior. And then you move into more and more, okay, based on your company's activity in relation to the wider activity of our 40,000 customers, how does that look in a greater context? Benchmarking against. And here we come more to the spend advice and the spend insights, creating transparency of what's being done. Yeah. And then further down the line is, okay, can we help you save money? Yeah. With our cashback offering or with some of our vendor partnerships where we create discounts for our customers. So you can say healthy spending is such a thing of many components that we believe are needed to really give a good spending experience in SMEs.
Yes. And I want to touch on spending experiences because it also means about things like invoices, purchase orders. Because coming back to being the business operating system, could you talk a bit more about what do we do when it comes to things like helping invoices, purchase orders, and why is that important beyond, and again, to my point on beyond cards?
Yeah. So you could say our mission is to make the entire spend process, the spend management, super smooth and surprisingly empowering, as we say. And of course, spend means card spend and OPEX spend, but it also means direct spend, which tend to come more in an invoice procurement process. So that has been important for us as well. And here we are stepping into a new problem space where there are offers in place. You need to ensure that there is matching between the invoicing and what was actually offered in the first place. Potentially the approval process of such typically bigger spend components are a little different than for smaller items. So this is certainly something we've had to tackle as well and are supporting across our markets today.
Got it. I want to switch gears a bit. In the conversations that we have been having over the last few months, there are a lot of software providers who are now thinking about, we want to offer payments, we want to offer bank accounts. And I think based on my experience, I personally feel that they're solving for launching a financial product, not the experience. So as a successful founder, what advice would you give to your peers who are working across accounting, HR, and other software verticals? How to solve for that experience?
So first of all, I agree to the problem statement, which in many cases is how do we create a more integrated experience for our customers? I certainly think that should be the ambition. I think the solution, is where you need to be a little careful. And you come into the typical, build by partner consideration. And I think some of them are considering to build.
Yeah.
I think there has been a sentiment that doing spend management, it's simple.
Yes.
It's the card and it's an app. We can all do that. And I think we have some accountability in that perception because we want to make it simple. Yes. That's our ambition. Yeah. And quite frankly, for the use of our product, it is very simple. But don't underestimate what's under the hood.
Yes.
Because there is really deep stuff under the hood, both operating as a regulated company, running your payment stack, dealing with fraud and transaction monitoring, which is a very, very different thing than running a software company. But as well, the functionality required for the finance team that you don't really sense when you're just a spender. How do you ensure that you support the finance team with multiple operations across Europe, multiple subsidiaries with a complicated governance structure, different integrations needed, and so on, different compliance requirements in Germany and UK and so on. So I think the concept of just organically building that, if you're in a completely different industry, I would think hard about that. Which brings us, should you acquire, should you partner? Acquisition, obviously, you get a head start here. But again, you will be combining with a business that has a very different profile than yourself, which can sometimes be tricky from an equity story investor perspective. So I really think that we're going to see a lot of partnerships in the market. And I think that's what we're feeling now coming to market with embedded. But quite frankly, the whole embedded finance theme is pretty hot out there.
I'll add another dimension to should acquire or partner, should be license. And I think a lot of providers think that, we own the customer experience, we own the journey, and we will license, a card as a service or a banking as a service provider. And I think to your point, the analogy, I'll go back to my Apple analogy. When Android and Apple were battling each out, Android used to say 8 GB RAM, 5000 mAh battery, 300 nit screen. And Apple used to say, it works, it's beautiful, right? And one of the challenges I've received in the market is spend management a product or a feature, right? And my answer has always been, if you want to build a phone with 4 GB RAM, it's a feature for you. If you want to give the experience where your business doesn't say, oh, I love your product because of spend management. They say, I love your product because I can actually grow and scale my business. And that's the difference. Yeah. And that nuance is what you have said, like under the hood, right? We have got super experienced teams who are best in class in building a financial services platform. Like I've been amazed by the depth of our payments platform itself. It gets unnoticed, but the level of control, the level of granularity, the level of scale that we have on a platform, that's unmatched. And that becomes really important.
That is important. And not many would know that we have 125 people working in exactly. Payments and operations around that. But that's a part of bringing good experiences to the market.
So, but this has been really great conversation. Like, learned a lot about why we are here, what we're doing. So I want to talk a bit towards the end about Pleo Embedded. Our mission remains that we want to make European businesses thrive. We want to work with our partners because we want to work together with them to make something unique, compelling, and powerful for the SMBs. And what I like to call create win-win-win partnerships. How do you think embedded panning out over the next 10 years of Pleo?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think, first of all, I think it's important that our commitment to the customers remains. And I think that we're going to be radically focused on that customer experience has to be the same or even better because of a more integrated experience. I think our commitment to the partners is how can we create even better customer experiences for you and through your offering? How can we make them more sticky with a one-to-many approach? How could we potentially upgrade your digital profiling? How can we give you better data and eventually also grow your ARPA, grow your revenue per customer together? And I think we have a really good shot at checking the box on all of those items. And the result for us obviously has to be that we can get in the hands of more customers. We will go for 40,000 to 100,000. And we're doing this because we want this to be a very meaningful contribution to our customer growth.
Yeah. So if I just were to summarize, our commitment to our partners is that we will together create a compelling offer that becomes unique and highly winning proposition in the market. Together, we'll drive success for European businesses. And we want to work together with them, bringing our expertise on spend management, our craft on product-led growth to create something really unique and compelling, to create the Apple business operating system for our partners and for European SMEs.
Exactly right.
Awesome. Really looking forward to our growth.
Thanks for the interview.
Thank you.